In this lesson, let's talk about the caption generator app that we're going to build. The link to the wireframe of our design can be found in the description below. In this application, our users will interact with just one screen. It will have the header, which will be caption generator, a tagline that describes the app, add details below to generate captions with GPT-3. It will have a simple text area or a text field that will customize to look like a text area that will allow the user to describe the topic that they want, and another text area that allows them to provide keywords. Then we'll add an option for the user to select the language that they want, and then lastly there'll be a call to action. So in this app, we're going to be focusing on two tasks that the GPT-3 model can perform, which is content generation and translation. Next, we'll create our Flutter application. If you're new to Flutter, please first head over to my Getting Started with Flutter video. The link is in the description below. Let's go to the terminal of VS Code and create Flutter create OpenAI GPT-3 Flutter tutorial. Then we navigate to our project. So if it's to understand the different folders and files that constitute the structure of our Flutter project, please head over to my Generating a Flutter app video. The link is down below. So now that we are done with creating the application, we're going to add a few dependencies that we'll use, starting with the Google fonts. So we'll enter the command flutterpub add Google fonts. Awesome. Next, we're going to add the language picker package that we'll use to actually get the languages that we need to implement the translation task. Flutterpub add language picker. Awesome. Next, we're going to add the main thing of this the main dependency, which is the OpenAI client. Great, we now have our three dependencies, and if you want to see the versions, you can head over to pubspec.yelm. You'll be able to see all the three main dependencies that we have created. Okay, now let's start designing the screen. We'll head over to main.dat. Main.dat is the entry point of our Flutter application that comes with this default code base that we're going to remove. So we're going to delete the class my homepage, which will result to an error on the home property of the material app. We're just going to remove the comments within just to clean up the file. Great. So my app class is a stateless widget that holds the material app with a property title that we're going to set to caption generator. But first, we're going to add that in one file that we'll call constants.dat, where we will add all our constants in one place, so that in case you want to customize this app, you'll be able to do that in one file. So we'll set a variable called app title and give it the text caption generator. Great. So we'll copy that variable and head over to our main.dat and add it to our title property. Let's import the constants.dat file. Now, since that is done, we have our error on the home property. So what we're going to do, we're going to create our class, which will be stateful widget called main, and that's what we're going to pass there, and set it to const, type const. Great. So our screen currently is blank and black. So next, we're going to set the scaffold, because we're creating a full screen that requires a whole screen, not a specific widget. And now that we have that, we have our screen that's white. So now let's focus on the theme. We want to set the theme on the theme property of the material app. The beauty of this is that it prevents you from repeating certain styles within the code if the style is just the same. So we can set it in one place and then it will reflect throughout the project. So we're going to set our text theme. If you recall, we had imported the Google Fonts package, and if you look at our wireframe, it comes with a certain font family, which is Quicksand. So we're just setting that in the text theme inside the theme data. So we'll set Google Fonts.quicksand.font family. Great. Now that is done. So we'll continue adding a few more things on inside the theme data as we go along. So back to our main class. We're just going to remove the debug show checked mode banner, which is not necessary. Just want to start in a clean canvas. So we're going to set the background of the scaffold, but just want to set the background on the constant so that in case you want to customize the background, you can safely do it in one place. So we're going to set it to dark or black. Then we're going to import the material package. Take our variable and enter it into the background property in the scaffold widget. And then we're going to set our body. Our body will start with the safe area widget so that our contents are safely set within the boundaries of the screen, since we are not going to have an up bar. And we're also going to set the single child scroll view so that in case our widgets overflow, we're able to scroll upwards and see. So our canvas or our screen is currently dark. So now let's enter the children. And to do that, we have subdivided the children into different classes. So we're going to first have a stateless widget that holds the class called header widget. This class is going to have two widgets, the first two text widgets that are at the top. So let's just add the header widget inside the children of the column widget. Got to set the children, then inside it is add the header widget class. Great. Then inside we're going to have our two text widgets which are aligned vertically, so we need the column widget, and then we set our children inside. So in the const we have the text for the first text widget, but we don't have the second one, so that's what we are setting. So we're going to set it as const string instruction is equals to now the text that is in the wireframe, this in the second text. That helps the user understand what they're supposed to do now that they're in the screen. So that they're able to interact with GPT-3 developed by OpenAI. Great. That's done. Now let's head back to our header widget and add our two text widgets. So we'll start with the first one, set it to app title, and then the second one that will hold the instructions variable. Great. But now we're not able to see our text widgets because we didn't set the font color. By default, the font color of the body is usually white because it comes with a is usually black because it comes with a white background, but we have set our theme to hold our scaffold to have the background black, so we need to also set the font color to white, and we can do that safely in the theme data or in the theme property of material app. Now we can see our screen, we can see our widgets in the screen, which is awesome. But now they're starting right at the top, so we want to work on that with the help of padding. And we're going to just set the padding on top first. Great. So if you recall, in some previous episode we talked about the different widgets that you can use to center your content, your widgets in Flutter. There are multiple. There is align, there is center. Column itself has its own properties that allows you to do that. So we're just simply doing that, but instead I had set it on one. Instead of doing that, let's set it on the main widget that's holding the two widgets. So we're going to do it on the column, but you can still, instead of doing this, you can actually just set the column, the cross axis property to center, and it will still work. So now let's style our first text widget by setting the font size to 30 because it's the headline. And then we give it a weight. Awesome. And you can see our font family has been adapted. Next, let's style our instruction by giving the font size of 16. Great. Let's give it a padding so that they're slightly separate from each other. So we're going to add the padding on the second widget. Awesome. So with that, we have finished our first class, which is a header widget, and it has been added to our children. So if we head back to our wireframe, the next widgets are input widgets. So we're going to create another class, but now it will be stateful, a stateful widget called input widget, and it's going to hold text field. And this is a class that we're going to reuse to represent the two text fields. So let's add that to our children in the main class. Great. And then we're going to play around again with the theme, because right now you won't be able to see the text field because the borders are dark or black. So let's just work on that. So we'll set the input decoration theme, and inside it we're going to set the enabled border and the focus. So in enabled, it's what we'll view, or the color of the border when you're just displaying the text input text field. But when we focus on it, we're also going to add a small effect. It's actually very small, but you just feel it when you implement it. So to do that, we're going to work on the enabled border and set the outline input border, give it a border side where we'll give it the width and the color. So we want the idea where when we focus, the width kind of expands, so you feel that effect that you're actually inside the text in field. So we have set the width to 2, and then we'll do the same thing on the focused border. We'll implement the same concept with the focusing on the border side, and then set the width to now 3, and then the color will be the same. Actually, the color will set it to white 54. So you'll see the effect in a few. So let's just continue. Now we're able to see our text field that we have added. So we're going to have 2 input widget classes there, but let's just work on the first one. Let's just finish on the text field and the settings. And the reason why we're setting it as a stateful widget is because we're going to pass props into it so that we create the uniqueness between the 2 input widgets. So for that, we're just adding another one. Great. Now you can see them in the screen. Now we're going to set one of the properties that we are handling is a controller. So let's set the text editing controller of the topic, which is the first text in the text field, and then let's set also the text editing controller of the keyword, which is the second text field. Great. And we're actually supposed to set it at the top before the const main. No, inside this, yeah, exactly. So now we're going to pick that and pass it to the key controller. Same to the second input widget. And then we're going to come to our class input widget and expect a prop of text editing controller. We'll give it the name controller, and then we're going to pass it in our constructor. So to do that, set the key required this dot controller, and then remember to pass our super key set to key. Then we pick our controller, set the actual controller property to the widget.controller. Great. So let's add more properties. Another property that we'll add will be, so let's remove the const on the children and set it only on the header widget, because the header widget is a stateful widget. Then we'll proceed to the next property, which is the mean lines, because remember our text fields, we're trying to customize them to be more of like a text area rather than the text field which has a one line. So we're going to add the min lines and the max lines. Then set it to the property as a property on the input widget class. It will be of data type int. Set it as required. and then add it to our text field. So the text field will be customized depending on the props that are passed to it. Okay, now let's set the marks. We have a bug. Because whenever you set the mean lines, you always have to set the max lines. Even if you don't set the max lines, you can always set it as null. So that's just basically that's what you're going to do, set the max lines as null, because you don't want to restrict it. So as you can see, our text fields are coming up, and you can see the difference between the two. Next, we're going to set the hint text for both of them. So there's a hint topic, and then there's a hint keyword. So our hint topic will just say describe your topic, and then our hint keyword will say enter your primary key. Then we're going to pass this to in our two input widgets, but first let's set the props. So we're expecting a string called hint text and set it as required. Great. So we're going to set an input decoration, and set our hint text to whichever hint text that will be passed to. And then set the hint marks to whichever hint marks lines that we will be passed to. So we just add that. It's an int variable. So set it as required. Widget.hint max lines. So we're going to have errors at the top in our main class because the two properties are needed in our input widget. So let's set the hint text to hint topic that we set in our constants.dat file, and set also the second one to hint keyword, and also let's set the max length for the hint text. Great. So with that, we haven't set the color of the hint text, that's why we can't see it. By default it's in black, so let's add that in our theme. Let's set the hint color to color dot white 60 or 70. Yeah, and now we're able to see our hint text, and our text fields have come into shape. Great. So the next thing we have is the language, the air sector for the language. Which will be a row. So below the last text field, we're going to add a row that will hold a text that states language. and then the other item in the row will be the language picker drop down. If you recall, we had added this package when we started. So this is what's going to help us create a drop down of default languages that have been set. You can actually use this widget to customize. Maybe if you want just 4 specific languages, you can still do that. But right now we're picking all the languages that have been set in this class. Great. And then we're going to set our, so we've done an item builder where we're going to display each of the languages in a drop down menu item. Now the reason why we can't see it is because we have to set our row inside a sized box and give it a specific size, because right now things are overflowing. So we're going to give it a width of 200. That is, I'm referring to the language picker drop down. And now we can see the language text, and we can see the drop down that has a selected language. We can also set the initial value. For us, we'll set the initial language to be English. And we'll import a part of that package into our project. Let's work on the drop down menu item and set the color, because as you can see we couldn't see anything, and it's mainly because of the design that we're going with, but it's easy to change because we're setting everything in the constants dot. So we'll set our color as with a variable name brand color, and we'll set the color as 38B6FF. Let's pick the variable and set it in our drop down menu item and set the text style to const. As you can see, even on the selected, the language that's being displayed, it has already turned to the color set. We're also setting the font weight, and you can see it has taken into effect. We're going to set a spacer so that the 2 items can be separated. Great, things are coming up. Next thing, we're going to set up padding so that it also comes in and aligns with the text fields that we have at the top. And we're going to set the bottom as well, 5 or 10. Awesome. And now we have our selected, the initial value, which is English, has been set. Awesome. So now let's work on the style on the language. It's mainly the font size. Set it to enlargen it. Yep. And now we handle the part where when a user selects a language, we set the selected language. So we'll use set state. At the top, we're going to set a variable that will hold our default selected language, which will get it from languages.english.name. Then we pick that so that when a user changes, we're going to set whatever the user has selected. So is equals to language dot name. Great. Now that we have that done, let's work on the second last widget, which is our button. So we'll set the first, we'll just leave the onPressed function empty and work on the child. Our child will have a text widget. So we'll state const string button text. That will state generate caption. Great. So let's pick that and add it to our text widget. Now let's work on the size of the elevated button. It's quite small. To do that, we'll work on the style elevated button dot style from. Inside it, let's set a fixed size. .400 width and 60 height. Then let's handle the border radius. Great. Awesome. Our screen is coming to shape. That's great. Now let's add the font size to the text in our button. Great. Now that's much better. Now our last widget is this a text widget, but we're not using any text. We're using the selectable text widget. The idea here is that our caption generator should be able to interact. App is supposed to interact with OpenAI GPT-3, and once we get our caption, we want to be able to copy it, right, and maybe send it to an app like Instagram, Facebook, whichever social media app that we want to set our caption. So instead of setting the text widget, because now you'll just be able to view it only, we're using the selectable text so that once the completion has been returned from the OpenAI GPT-3, you're able to copy right from the app and paste it to your respective destination. So that's why we're using the selectable text. So we set it a specific string. Right now we'll just add something so that we can see where we have positioned it. So we're going to set OpenAI GPT-3 is awesome. Okay, and then we're going to head over to a selectable text, align it to center, and give it a style. So our text style, we're going to set the color to the brand color. Yes, we can now see our selectable text. It's quite small, so let's work on the font size to 18. Yes, and then let's add the padding so that it doesn't start right from where the button is. Beautiful. So that's it. We have added all our widgets, which is pretty awesome. We have our title, we have our inputs, we have our languages set so that we can implement the translation task of GPT-3, and we have our button, and where we have OpenAI GPT-3 is awesome is where our completion will be.